to know about mental health and the seriousness of it. So let's get another round of applause for Elise.
Our next speaker is Danish Hassan. Danish is a community organizer and social entrepreneur who has over 8 years of experience in nonprofit work. After graduating from the University of South Florida, Danish served as an AmeriCorps Vista, leading a team of researchers to help curtail the opioid crisis in Central Florida. He founded Tampa's Opioid Research Network, an organization dedicated to resolving this national epidemic, while completing a master's degree in law from Washington University in St. Louis. Danish has served on the board for a charity community clinic, spearheaded community events for children on the autism spectrum disorder, and served as a researcher at the Moffitt Cancer Center. The impact of his work in the Tampa Bay area and his commitment to furthering public health saw him being honored as the youngest ever recipient of the Outstanding Alumni Award at USF in April of this year. His talk today is based off his experiences speaking with high school students on the dangers of substance abuse. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Danish Hassan.
Good evening. It's a little loud. So, I want to start off by saying that when a speaker speaks on such topics on an event like this, the audience naturally thinks, what is it that inspired them to speak on such an event? So for me, the journey started about 1.5 years ago. I was speaking to a classroom of high school students. And while they were doing a group work, the teacher comes up to me and she says, at the end of your presentation, why don't you ask the students how many of them have suffered personally, or they know somebody who has suffered with the opioid crisis. So as I wrapped up the presentation I was giving on mental health and addiction, I asked the students to raise their hand if they or someone, a loved one, or a family member, a classmate, had ever suffered with addiction. And to my surprise, about 12 out of the 30 students raised their hand. And then I asked them how many of them had personally suffered with addiction. And I was amazed that 5 people out of the 30 students raised their hands. So the next time I did this presentation, it was about 2 weeks later at another high school. I started out the presentation with this same question. I asked the students, how many of you guys have personally suffered with addiction or know somebody who has? And again, I was shocked. In that class of 40 students, about 14 of them raised their hands. So then I stopped. I closed down my PowerPoint, and I was like, this is something that needs to be addressed. So the next question I asked them, why is it that so many of you and your classmates are experimenting with substances? Now, this could have included tobacco, it could have been opioids, it could have been alcohol. And the number one answer I got from them was stress. Now, that shocked me a little bit. I mean, we've all been in high school, and we know how stressful it could be for somebody who's 15, 16, 17 years old. But you know what the irony is? The older we get, the more our stress level increases. So then you go off to college and now you have bills to pay. Then might come grad school and maintaining a job and maintaining a relationship. Then you have the stresses of life. So if these students were already so stressed at such a young age, I was worried that as they grew older, what was going to happen to them if they didn't have positive ways of relieving that stress. So I asked these students again. I said, so when you guys are this stressed, what is the number one thing that you do? Now, I remember a time when a lot of us, can remember this too, when we had a bad day or when we were stressed or anxious, our parents would take us to the park, we'd go to the library and check out a book, we would play with the neighbors. That was the way that we relieved our stress. Now, these students, the number one answer they gave me was social media. So here they are saying that their stress levels are so high, and the way that they are dealing with their stress is by going to social media, which basically is an escape from reality. Right? Social media is that bubble that we've created, this false sense of our community. It's just an escape from figuring out our problems. So before I go any further, I want to throw up 2 definitions for you. And this is something that I always start off talking about. So when we think of health, and this is very important for us, especially in medicine, health is not just the absence of a disease, but rather we have to look at the patient or a person holistically. So their spiritual health, their psychological health, their social health, all of that is very important. So that's the first thing that we need to remember. Secondly, when we talk about addiction, it's not just being dependent on a specific substance, but rather when you take that substance away from the person, they have a hard time functioning and completing their tasks, right? So again, when these high schoolers become college students and graduate students and move on with their life, if they don't have a positive way of coping with the stresses that they face, the obstacles in their life, the difficulties, then, and their number one way of coping with it is social media, and then as a result, they're going to substances, we're creating a society, a whole generation that's going to be suffering with addiction. So, now, why is it that so many individuals are turning towards social media? That's something that I asked the high school students about as well. And for them, a lot of them, what I realized, had not developed coping mechanisms. You know, when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, when you're in middle school, it's so imperative that you are able to develop, through your parents or your community, a way to relieve your stress. You know, when you have a bad day, what are the things that you can do to improve your day? How is it that you cope with your difficulties and any hardship, any setbacks that happen, right? But these kids grew up with technology, and for the most part, it was uncontrolled. Every time, you know, a child would cry, or, you know, they were feeling anxious, or they were sad, the number one response of the parent was to put a device in front of them. So now these students are unable to develop coping mechanisms, which is so key, right? And what are some easy ways of coping with stress? It could be hitting a tennis ball. It could be meditation. It could be friends, but not on social media, right? It could be going to the movies, taking a walk in the park, painting, arts and crafts. There are so many things that you could be doing to relieve your stress, but these students never develop that. So for me, that was a big, something that absolutely stuck out when I was giving these presentations to them. Now, what is the issue with social media? The number one issue with social media is it's a place where you can vent your problems, but more often than not, there's no solution that comes back to you. And one thing I would always tell these high school students, if you had a flat tire, you could take a picture of it on the side of the road, post it on Facebook or Twitter. Instantly, within minutes, you might get hundreds of likes and comments and shares. But out of all those people, the hundreds of Instagram followers, the thousands of Facebook friends, how many would actually come fix your tire for you? When you have a flat tire on the side of the road, who is it that you call? You call your partner, you might call your parents, grandparents, your roommate, right? That small circle of 4 or 5 people that you know would take the time out of their busy day to come help you. So when I gave this example to the high school students, it completely changed their perspective. So the number one problem in social media, from what I saw, was that we're able to talk about our problems, but a lot of times we don't receive any constructive criticism. We don't get any people who are there to help us solve our problems. We don't have people who are guiding us to overcome our difficulties. And even if we do, we can't trust the sources to be correct, right? So now we're presenting our problems in a very public manner and escaping reality for a little bit, but in reality, we're not solving our problem. So you go to sleep that same day, you wake up the next day, and you still have that same problem. You really haven't worked constructively towards fixing it. So that's the number one problem with social media. Secondly, it gives us this false sense of who it is in our life that really matters. And like I said, coping mechanisms are so important. And for a lot of us, if I ask you what your coping mechanism is, a lot of you would answer your family, your friends, your roommates. So when these people are connected virtually with others, they don't have that, right? So that becomes another problem as it is. And thirdly, specifically about substance abuse, you know, when you go to the movies and it's a rated R film, someone who's not 17 can't go in because they check your license for your date of birth. Similarly, when you're buying alcohol or tobacco products, there's a check in place. But when it comes to social media, it's highly unregulated. So these students who are going on social media, they're being exposed to all sorts of things. Now, sometimes it could be positive, but you know, our news feeds are mostly similar to what we believe, and they're similar to the perspectives we already hold. So imagine if you're constantly in this state of when you're worried or anxious, or you're not sure how to cope with your stress positively, the things that are going to be showing on your news feed are going to be reflecting that. So again, these students who are so young, and it's so imperative that they, at that age, are able to develop these positive coping mechanisms, because otherwise, substance abuse is almost inevitable for them. Now, again, so my specialty is mostly in the opioid addiction, and the statistics that I see regarding it are incredible. I mean, every day, 125 Americans die as a result of opioid overdose. When something tragic happens, we turn on our TV and we see this many number of people have died. That tragic news is repeated for days and days and days, and we see it everywhere. We see it on our Instagrams, our Facebooks, we hear it on the radio, and the morning shows, the late shows. But can you imagine, every single day you wake up and turn on the news, and the headline says, 125 Americans dead as a result of opioid overdose. Just think about it for a second. It's absolutely incredible. And what happens when people get caught up in the cycle of addiction? A lot of times they're unable to hold on to their relationships. A lot of times they aren't able to hold on to their jobs. When they lose their jobs, then they go into substance abuse. Homelessness goes up. They lose their health insurance. So all these factors combined become a huge economic burden on the person and on society. And more than that, to get somebody out of the cycle of addiction takes so much time, and it's so easy to relapse. I mean, throughout my work, you cannot imagine how many individuals would come up to me. Anyone from the age of 15 to the age of 60 or 70, and they would have a parent who overdosed, a grandparent who overdosed, a boyfriend who overdosed. One of my best friends, her brother overdosed. And this was before I started research in the opioid crisis. So the opioid crisis itself is so huge, but when you talk about tobacco, when you talk about alcohol, when you talk about marijuana, and you add up all those addictions, think about the great impact it's having. Think about the generations that are coming who are dependent on these substances. But the take-home message for you today, so talks like this are great for informing the public about an issue. It's great for sharing statistics and experiences. But if the speaker cannot give you something to take home, something to empower you, it almost becomes pointless. So here's an exercise I want to do with you guys. So if everyone could stand up, please. Come on, guys. It'll take a minute. All right. So if everyone can reach for the ceiling, please. All right. Now put your hands down. Put your hands down. Now stay standing. All right. Now the second phase of this, we're going to do the same exact thing, but this time, I want you guys to close your eyes. Now think about your presence in this room. Be aware of those people around you, your neighbors. Be aware of the sense of community within our college. Now, keeping all of that in mind, I want you to reach for the ceiling one more time, but really try to go as high as you can. As high as you can. Get on your tiptoes. Reach as much as you can. All right. Now open your eyes and you guys can have a seat. Now, what this exercise represents is something very profound. Between the first time you did the exercise and the second time, everyone reached a little bit further. And how much was the difference? It was only this bit, this much. But this much difference, when you think about your community, when you think about those who you love, when you think about the people in your life that matter, this little bit here can be the difference in changing someone's life. Especially as physicians, when we see our patients or when we try to take care of the community's public health. If we all keep in mind and be aware of our presence, be aware of our roles, and understand that we can empower others, then this little bit makes a huge difference. It can make a huge difference on your friends, on your neighbors, on your community, on our state, and our society as a whole. Thank you guys.